Hello and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing with me, Jonny McFarlane. Today I'm joined by Joshua Barrie, who is in the Netherlands ahead of tonight's massive Champions League second leg qualifier against PSV, and Stevie Clifford, one of our columnists at the Rangers Review and known on Twitter as Four Lads Had a Dream with his popular blog. Stevie, I'm going to come straight to you. We've all kind of given our opinions yesterday on the whole Alfredo Morelos situation that came to light yesterday with him no longer being in the squad for this massive game at Rangers Talisman. What's your take on events as they stand? I know you've been quite critical of Alfredo Morelos in the past. You felt that he needed to give more. Do you still hold that position, and how do you feel ahead of this game?
Yeah, first thing, extremely disappointed that we find ourselves in this position. Alfredo Morelos, without doubt, is one of Rangers' best players. He's one of Rangers' most influential players. He's a hero to a lot of the fans, quite rightly. Let's not forget that at times in the last couple of years, Alfredo Morelos has single-handedly carried this team. He's made a massive contribution, but there's obvious issues there. And I warned last November, much to criticism from people, that if he didn't shape up and if he didn't get himself right, attitude and physically, etc., then Giovanni van Bronckhorst wouldn't put up with it. We're now in August, and this situation has once again come to the fore, and it seems to be a recurrent theme. And I've been critical of Alfredo, but I'm critical because I know how good he can be, and I know how good and how influential he can be to this side. He's without doubt our top man. Without doubt, for me, when he plays, everyone else around him is better and we're a better team. I don't subscribe to the fact that we'll be all right without him. I don't subscribe to the fact that Antonio Cholak or Kamar Roof are anywhere near his quality or standard. They're not. They might be capable of scoring goals, but they don't offer what he does. In fact, I think what he offers is very limited, and which is why we've struggled so much to replace or find a suitable, not replacement, but a suitable player that can come in and dovetail with him. But at the end of the day, this is on Alfredo Morelos, and we're here again. And I'm not prepared to throw him under the bus. I don't want to do that. I'm prepared to be critical with him, and I think that's deserved as such. Or I think that's a stance to take that's understandable. But I'm not here to throw Alfredo Morelos under the bus. I don't think it's the end for him at Rangers, but I think it's got to be said that this has to be something that he takes on board, and he has to, allow himself to listen to what Giovanni van Bronckhorst is saying and the demands of the club, because we cannot continue this. Cannot keep coming back to the same issues with Alfredo Morelos. So it's not the end for me. It's a really disappointing situation to be in. I'm not sure that we needed to be in it and on the eve of such a massive game either. But there's more questions than answers for me. And it's a really disappointing situation to be in.
Listen, one of the things about life in general, when you cover any football club, is that if you go on Twitter, there's a lack of nuance. And the good thing about this format, I think, as Stevie just illustrated there with his answer, is there's space to develop a point of view. And this does require nuance, because you just can't go in two-footed on Alfredo Morelos on this. For the points that Stevie's illustrated, Josh, you know, he's the top European goal scorer in the club's history, and we all know what he's capable of when he's at his very best. I talked yesterday about 2018-19 season when he was the top scorer on the group stages of the Europa League, and he was bullying teams left, right and centre at the very highest level that Rangers could play at that time. And we know the Europa League is a really, really good level in European football. So this is a guy who's excellent at his best, absolutely excellent. There needs to be a bit of nuance here, doesn't there? And there needs to be a bit of balance. And two things can be true at the same time. Alfredo Morelos can be an excellent player, at his best, a top Rangers player. The fans can love him, but he can also be guilty of unprofessionalism. And it's also to say we're drawing a line under this. We're drawing a line in the sand over this. I suppose it's about how it's communicated, how it's taken forward from here.
It is, yeah, and you know, the manager was asked yesterday. I asked him effectively, how long will this go on for? Are you leaving him out of the weekend's game at Ross County? And he kind of said, effectively, he was saying it's up to Alfredo, so the ball is in his court. But I agree, and you know, Morelos, so often I think the best players, the most, you know, Steven Gerrard's called him, was it a maverick he called him? I think we were talking about yesterday, Johnny. They are these sometimes complex figures who need, you know, more attention from their manager, or they just take a little bit more to bring out the best consistently. But obviously, I guess managing people isn't always straightforward, as you know, Johnny, with managing me. Yeah, that was a joke, though. I wasn't being that serious about that. So yeah, but then
Stick to the stats, lad.
Yeah, that's fine. I know I'm actually quite easy. I should have said Derek, shouldn't have? That would have been better. Much more difficult. But yeah, but in contrast to that, I'd sort of feel that this is almost a bit of a last straw situation and a chance. You know, before, when Morelos has been left out, to go back to the Hearts example, a couple of years ago, there wasn't this same, I guess, reaction from outwardly a press conference to the same degree. And I think you're right. My prediction is that Morelos will kind of turn it around.
I feel that way too.
I do. And I think that obviously it's not an ideal situation. He's not out in Holland today, but he's obviously in a frame of mind, or, you know, Gio said yesterday, he's not mentally and physically there. So he's not going to be able to come on and impact the game anyway, even if he was on the bench. And then if he's on the bench and he comes on, or he doesn't come on, the manager has to then answer that anyway. So I think this is a bit of a last straw maybe situation for him to really consistently reach his peak at Rangers. And that was, I think, when Van Bronckhorst first came in, he was brilliant, and he kind of turned him into, in my opinion, his best ever version of himself, even better than the 1920 season, because he was an all-round, you know, he was just all-round by that point. He obviously had that injury, and he played a lot of football, and Conor Goldson was saying yesterday it's his first big injury. Probably need to take that into consideration as well. But it is worth noting, I think, that under Gio and Roy Mackay as well at the start, he seems so focused, and you just wonder if, as you say, Johnny, it's a conversation that requires a bit of nuance and isn't black and white. And ultimately, we'll have to keep coming back to it and see what happens, because it's not going to go away. And as the manager said yesterday, I think it's in Morelos' hands. If he comes back and reaches his top level of fitness and goes and scores 20-something goals this season, that's brilliant. And that's what everyone at the club will want, even if you maybe just need to noise up that situation a little bit. Obviously, I agree with Stevie, a huge blow that he's not in the team tonight, because not only is he the best, I think in European competition, he's the best player Rangers have. There's so many games in the past in which he's carried Rangers, but equally teams evolve and things have to change. And I think it's the right decision if a player isn't in the right frame of mind to go, okay, maybe Čolak isn't going to help us build up as much, but he has scored this number of goals. He does have strengths, and Rangers just need to try and play to that tonight if they want to go through.
Yeah. Over the years, Stevie, Rangers have built a reputation for standards. We know that, and that's been intrinsic in the club on and off the pitch for the top players who have made their names and become legends in Govan. It's as simple as that. When you hear about a player who is breaching standards to such an alarming degree, though, Stevie, that is a test, isn't it? I suppose that is inherent in the problem here, that Rangers is bigger than any one player, and if that player is not living up to the expectations of a Rangers player, especially at 26, we're not talking about a young lad here finding his way in the game anymore, then patience has to run to a certain point, and then that patience has to snap, because Rangers is too big a club to carry a passenger, because eventually it will bite them in the backside. And that's the balance, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's also a balance to how critical we are of him, because it was only 4 weeks ago that Giovanni van Bronckhorst said that he was looking sharp and they were delighted to have him back. So there's an obvious point here that people will then say, as a support, will then say, how come it's went to that 4 weeks ago and we're now here where he's got massive fitness and attitude issues? Now, the problem is that we don't see what goes on every day in training. We can see what goes on in a match day. And I don't think, only my own personal opinion, I don't think that Alfredo Morelos has looked right since he's came back. I think that when Alfredo Morelos is on it, he looks sharp, and that can trick your mind into thinking that he looks fit. And then when he doesn't, and maybe he's not on it quite so much, he might look unfit and he might look a bit sluggish. And Alfredo's one of these guys that appearance for me, kind of on how his demeanour is, sometimes can reflect on what we think fitness-wise, etc. It's no doubt to me that he was carrying a bit more than he should. But somebody that's been out for so many months and is naturally a bit bigger and a bit more physical the way Alfredo is, I think that's natural. However, the application side of it has got to be spot on for me, and it's obviously not. And it's obviously not for Giovanni van Bronckhorst, which is a key message. But I think it's also key to see that we're hearing, things that he's done that's got to this point. The things that he's done, Johnny, in the grand scheme of things, are irritable and they're annoying to Van Bronckhorst. I get that, but I don't think it's a door closed situation.
No, definitely not.
And I think the way that Van Bronckhorst, we look back at the real legends of this club, the likes of McCoy's, the likes of Gorham, the likes of even Gascoigne from my era, have all had disciplinary issues. They've all been sent home. They've all had issues. They've all missed games and had punishment. So, unfortunately, Alfredo Morelos is that. And it might just be that what Joshua says is correct. And I do subscribe to that somewhat, that it might just be a jolt to the system in terms of trying to get him focused and back in a frame of mind. But I don't think we needed this at this point in the season. I don't think we needed to be in this situation before PSV. And obviously Van Bronckhorst had to take this step. And it doesn't surprise me because Steven Gerrard was very, very lax on Alfredo Morelos compared to what he could have been. And this sort of thing happened under Steven Gerrard, but he was allowed to get away with it. He spoke about Alfredo being like his little brother, putting his arm around him and stuff like that, being this maverick player. We understand all that, I get that, but have the club facilitated that somewhat and allowing it to get to this point? Because all of a sudden, Giovanni van Bronckhorst and Steven Gerrard are polar opposites. So I have sympathy with Alfredo Morelos to an extent that, it seems like he's been made out to be, the big bad wolf and everything's on him. And he has to take responsibility. And I have been critical for him. I completely understand people that will say, well, hold on, you have said that. And I firmly believe that. But I'm not willing to throw him completely under the bus and say everything's on him. As a club, we need to try and refocus him, re-energize him and get him sorted. This could be our way of doing it. It could be Giovanni van Bronckhorst's way of doing it. Obviously a different style. So it needs to be the last time we're at this point. That's the kind of thing I would say in terms of it. I'm not here to say we should get rid of him or anything. I really don't want that. We're a far better side, and I think we're a really good side with him in it. I think that he's a really fantastic player. So ultimately, it's just disappointment for me that we're at this space. And without repeating myself, I just hope that he takes a warning and we go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was interesting. Just as an aside, Patrick Caskey put out something on Twitter yesterday. I think the XG Rangers with Morelos is significantly higher than the XG. I think it's almost double than without. So that shows you his value to the team.
Johnny, can I just say something like XG and all that makes perfect sense, but see for the average guy like me who just goes along to watch, it doesn't need stats and everything else to tell you how much Alfredo Morelos brings to the Rangers team. He can orchestrate things for himself. He makes space. He finds space. He bullies and occupies defences. He is that vital and he is that important. So I get all the stats and everything. They just make sense, but sometimes it's just what you see. And we are a much better team with him in it. We're a much better outfit with him in it. But that doesn't mean that he gets a free pass. So
absolutely.
I completely understand the club taking these measures, but I just don't want it to turn into a character assassination as such. He can be criticised for where we are and what's happened. If he's made mistakes in training and things like that, then absolutely get it. We have to come to a point where there's no more and it's a line in the sand, and I think we're there, obviously, but let's not close the door on somebody that is so vital.
Okay, let's move on to another big talking point. We're getting a lot of people coming in asking about Alex Lowry. He was savagely tackled last night. The player for Dumbarton was booked for the challenge. It was in a 7-0 defeat in what is now the Challenge Cup. I think it's called the SPFL Trust Trophy. Rangers, as I say, won the game 7-0. The game was in its dying embers. I think it was the 88th or 89th minute. So Dumbarton are being smashed. It's sheer frustration or whatever from the player, but he's gone in 2-footed in the back of Alex Lowry. It's totally and utterly unacceptable, disgraceful and cowardly challenge on a young player from a 30-year-old professional footballer. I'll go to you, Joshua. Did you see the challenge, and what does it tell us about the standards of refereeing in Scotland, or the things that are allowed to pass? That challenge was deemed a booking. I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, so I had to jump off there. There was hoovering inside, so I've found my way outside somewhere. Hopefully the connection stays. I mean, when you see that tackle, it's one I think David McCallum said he was upset and angry. And I think anyone watching a game like that, when you see a young talent get tackled like that, it's just such a sad indictment of Scottish football in many ways. But and if you're only given a yellow card for that, then you get away with it, basically, don't you? And it can happen again. So terrible. You hope it's a one with Lowry where it looks bad and there's maybe an initial shock around it, but hopefully the kind of diagnosis isn't quite as bad, because I think he'd actually scored a hat-trick in that game, and the Rangers B team were playing absolutely brilliant. So yeah, just a terrible. I don't know. I mean, Stevie obviously can come in and explain the rules, but I don't know what how that wasn't given as a red card. What's he done there, Stevie? What's the thinking, do you think?
Well, it's serious foul play. It endangers the opponent. It's reckless. It ticks every criteria for it being a red card. The only thing I would offer in defence of the official is that it looks like he turns, as Alex actually plays a wonderful crossfield pass, and I wonder, and the footage isn't great, so the only thing I would counter is saying has he turned to follow the ball? The issue I have with it is the assistant is on the halfway line, ideally placed, and it's his responsibility to watch the play after the ball goes. That's common practice as an assistant. Now, a lot of people have said he doesn't flag, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't need to flag because they'll be talking to each other. So flagging isn't necessary as such. It's not in your direction to you must flag, etc. So if he's telling him in his ear that that's a yellow, then that's completely wrong. It's a tackle from behind. It's 2-footed. It's off the ground. It catches Alex high. It's an atrocious, cowardly moment from a player that obviously was sick of a young boy running rings around him. Let's be honest. That's the situation it was in. It's the dangers of playing at that level where you get lads, who haven't perhaps made the peak of their profession and face young lads who are on the cusp of something bigger and better and just think, I'll just snap you. I've seen the mentality a lot of times in amateur football, but you don't expect it at levels above. I'm willing to give the referee some degree of sympathy because I've been there, and as you turn and things can happen. But for all of them to miss it, especially the assistant on that level, I don't agree with. Also, I think it's unfair that we criticise the rest of the team by saying they didn't surround, they didn't react. This is young kids, it's young boys, really young players who are just getting used to playing at that level against men. So I have a degree of sympathy. I know that Charlie McCann was especially upset and, encountered the player in the tunnel, etc., which I can understand completely. But it's a sort of challenge where if we understand and say, fine, we'll cut the officials some slack, our governing bodies should be looking at that and going back on it and saying that this player should face retrospective action, because as a country, if we're going to get anywhere and nurture these young lads and bring them on, you can't expect them to face hammer-thrown, cowardly challenges like that. And that's what it was. I hope Alex is all right. He's a wonderful, wonderful player and somebody that's starting to get up to grips of where he should be, and hopefully will be involved in Gio's squad very soon, because ultimately he has that talent. We've seen it last night, a wonderful hat-trick. And he's somebody that needs to be playing in our first team level or thereabouts, which ultimately, is up to himself now. Progress is absolutely. But it's a really poor situation. I have, as I said, a degree of sympathy for the officials, not making excuses for them, but I've been there before, and it's a difficult thing as a ball switch. So let's hope that Alex is all right.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have any update at the moment. The Rangers review is going to keep on that all day today to try and get some information. And if we do, we will certainly get it out there via our website. Last night, it was far too early to make a diagnosis or to understand what was going on. So I think David McCallum was pretty clear that it would be looked at by the doctors today. And Alex Lowry, I think, was certainly, he wasn't taken to hospital after the game or anything like that. But it's something that will be assessed today, and then we'll get back to you on the website if we get any more information. But Joshua, just regarding refereeing in general, and Stevie, I'll ask you to come in on this as well once Josh has had a say. Listen, I can't claim to be a refereeing expert, unlike Stevie, who's qualified. But what frustrates me in Scotland is that we moan when our teams are dumped out of Europe and are showing up for having a lack of technical talent. We've seen Motherwell get pumped out of the whatever league, the Conference League, I think it was, by an Irish team. We've seen many teams go out over the years earlier than you would expect from smaller teams that look technically better. And I worry that part of that is in Scotland, we tend to have a rather relaxed application of the rules, just generally. Now, I know you look at an example like Lundstrom was sent off incorrectly, and that does obviously happen. That was too forceful interpretation of the rules. But just generally, I think we allow a physicality that you just wouldn't see in Spain, for example. Yet we have the same laws of the game here in Scotland as they do in Spain. For me, that holds back young technical talents. Players like a Barrie Mackay, like an Alex Lowry, I think it's more difficult for these guys to come through in Scotland because they're not kind of protected in the way that a young talent like that would be protected in Spain or Italy. Is that fair, or am I talking nonsense?
Yeah, maybe so. I guess you're always there's a discussion around this in the Premier League at the moment down south, isn't there? With the I guess the tendency to let a game go and let it float, and not have it disrupted all the time by tactical fouls or whatever, but also then being strict on it. And if you heard, I think it was Dermot Gallagher speaking about the Rangers Hibs game on Sky Sports. The reason he gave, he said he thought it was a penalty. The Cholak when Bashiri pulled down Cholak, he thought it was a penalty, and effectively his reasoning was, look, if you let defenders do that, then they'll you need to draw a line somewhere, and if they're putting their hands on someone and trying to impinge on them getting somewhere, however long the contact went on for. But again, the difficulty then is if you give every penalty like that, you're going to be given, I guess, a lot of penalties in the box. So it's difficult, and refereeing, I guess, is never going to be a perfect art, but it definitely could be better. So you might well have a point about that. But as I say, it's a difficult balance, isn't it, between trying to let things flow and keep it tight. But tackles like that, I think, are out with that conversation. There's nothing to do there. But that's like, I think it's 7-0 at that point. The game's dead. And I think even just using your common sense as a referee there. Obviously, as Stevie's watched in better detail than me, maybe he's looking at where the ball's going. But yeah, there's no attempt to play the ball there or anything. I think it is just trying to leave one on someone, and Lowry seemed to go, a few foot up in the air from the footage, which wasn't great. It looked a terrible tackle.
Stevie, what's your thoughts?
Thoughts are that the consistency levels in Scotland, particularly from referees that are supposed to be top level, are really poor. Willie Collum is somebody that I have particular issues with. I've seen time and time again him doing things that don't make sense to me. If you look back, and even out with Rangers, people say, it's blue-tinted specs, etc. after the John Lundstrom incident. Anyone that thinks that the tackle on John Lundstrom in the first half was worse or any way lesser than what he was ultimately sent off for is ridiculous. John Lundstrom's not off the ground. He's not endangering an opponent. It doesn't tick any criteria for red card. And it's completely different from the one in the first half where the boy, I think it was Doyle Hayes, might have been Henderson, I can't remember which one it was. There's a scissor motion. He's diving in. He's caught Lundstrom ankle high. He's off the ground. Everything about that is wrong. And this is my issue with Willie Collum. I watched him referee Hibs versus Motherwell Hibs it was at Fir Park in the Cup. And he sent a boy off after something like 15, 16 seconds for a poor challenge. 4 or 5 minutes later, there was one that was worse that he deemed it to be a yellow card. And it was strictly because he didn't apply the same laws of the game that he did for the first one. Now, arguably, the first one was correct, but this consistency level isn't there with Willie Collum. I seen him do it for St Mirren at Paisley when he caught somebody high. And it seems to be that rather than referee the game to the laws of the game, he plays it for him and how he wants to do it. I watched him send off Daniel Candeias in the last minute for celebrating a goal at St Mirren, and the defender banged in and had a go at him. He then put Candeias off. I watched him argue with Carlo Ancelotti because he wanted to add 5 minutes on for the Real Madrid friendly at Ibrox last season. Ancelotti was on the pitch telling him to cut the game. It's a friendly. It's done. It's 2-1. It's finished. And he wanted to add on that time. And ultimately, he had to back down, which as a referee is completely embarrassing. But I watched Willie Collum, and I think that it's not about the laws of the game, but it's about him and how much he can make it about him. And I think that Saturday's game, the way he applied the laws of the game don't make sense. It's not consistent. And I just struggle that he's our top official when I think there's other officials in Scotland that are far more capable. And I think we've lost other officials because of the position he's in. I watched Bobby Madden down south doing excellently well. He's a brilliant referee and he'll go down to have an excellent career down there. And I wonder how many other Scottish referees will see that now as a viable route to progressing to the top and getting where they should be because they're not blocked by Willie Collum.
That's a great point, Stevie. I totally agree with you there.
I'm very disappointed in his performance on Saturday. I don't fathom how, even by his angle, he's close enough. He's 5-10 yards away. There's no aggression from John Lundstrom at all. And the reason I go on about that is because that directly impacted that game. I'm not saying for definite Rangers would have won that game. That would be naive because anything could happen in football. But we're winning 2-1. And if he doesn't go off, does Alfredo Morelos have that situation? Does he then have the situations after the game that we're in a situation now? It's all countered of that one action. Now, I don't believe that Alfredo Morelos was a red card on Saturday either. I don't think it ticks the criteria for violent conduct. It must be brute force and brutality in the challenge. I don't think it's there. I think it's petulant, and I think there's ground for an appeal for Alfredo Morelos as well. And I think that Alfredo Morelos has done worse in the past and got appealed, and I think that his reputation comes before him. And I think, again, Willie Collum doesn't give himself any time to think about it. He doesn't give himself any time to think about John Lundstrom. He's very aggressive in his style, charging over with red cards and things. But if you look at it all over Scotland, you look at Munro's officiating between Ross County and Kilmarnock, there was 2 horrendous challenges that have now been cited. How he doesn't see their red cards, I don't understand either. And it's things like that people will point to and say that the worst tackles of the weekend don't get actioned on, while the least likely one does. And that's why we're all frustrated. I think VAR will make an instant difference. And I understand people saying the referee still has to go to the monitor. I understand that. But in the cases of the weekend where it's that obvious and it's been drawn to attention, it would take an extremely brave referee to then say, I'm sticking with my decision, which is ultimately wrong. I think if he goes to the monitor both times in our game on Saturday, I don't think red cards are produced. I think if they go to the monitor in Dingwall both times, 2 red cards are produced. And it's that inconsistency we're talking about, Johnny, across the board and in previous incidents that infuriates fans of football everywhere. It needs to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, listen, we're getting some questions in about the PSV game, so I'm going to go to Josh and ask you about your lineup. I noticed you just posted on Twitter that you're going with McLaughlin, Barisic, Sands, Goldson, Tavernier, Davis, Lundstrom, Kent, Tillman, Lawrence, and Cholak. Josh, the only difference is, in terms of my lineup, I think I would go for Matondo in there instead of Lawrence. I'll explain that because I think Lawrence is a better player and I think he's had more of an impact. But I just wonder if Rangers are going to really need to go on the break here today, and the kind of lightning pace that Matondo has means this game is almost made for him. Why do you disagree with that?
I just sort of think it'll be quite a similar approach to last week. I don't see Kent and Barisic that being disrupted on the left. Davis and Lundstrom in the midfield, I struggle to see how that's disrupted. As I said yesterday, I could see a situation where Van Bronckhorst opts for a different approach and plays Glenn Kamara because he's obviously favoured him kind of in these types of games away from home in European football, and maybe then plays Tillman off the side. But I think you need to get Tillman close to Cholak because ultimately Rangers need to win this game. I don't think they'll be going there to hold on and try and go for extra time and penalties. And if you look at the shape the Rangers played last week, obviously it was Tavernier widest on the right. I think that'll be the exact same today with Barisic tucking in and just providing that extra passing option deep in the pitch. That means that Tavernier kind of has to go wide because otherwise, he's I don't think he's going to stay back in that a deeper position. And as a result of that allows kind of the right-sided player to tuck inside. And I don't think that suited Matondo so far. Maybe there's a situation where Rangers just do keep him high up the pitch and look to exploit some of the space that PSV vacate. Maybe it's something they want to bring off the bench. But I think you also need to go with probably players who can, Matondo's only started 2-3 games for Rangers, and I think the criticism of him has been a bit premature because for me it looked like at the weekend he was playing in a role that he wasn't overly comfortable with. Playing so narrow and not being able to pick up the ball and by the touchline and drive his opposition fullback. He's obviously a player that's got a lot of talent that will just take a little bit of time maybe to coax that out of him. But as a result of that, I'd probably be tempted to go with a little bit more experienced, of an experienced player in Lawrence. Thought he worked okay with Tavernier last week. Obviously, that led to the goal as well. And as I say, for me, Rangers are going to go to this game tonight not with an aim of trying to go the distance. They need to win. They can win by keeping it tight and attacking in the last 20 minutes. But I also think the inclusion of Stephen Davis last week and I presume tonight, shows that they expect it to be a game they have to keep the ball. They're not just reacting against the ball. And I think when they had the ball in the first half last week, the possession was really good against PSV, and Van Nistelrooy had to change it. We asked him about that in the press conference after, and he explained that in detail what PSV had to change. So that's what I'd go for, but I can understand the thinking as well behind just the pace of Matondo because he is so quick, and all it takes is one ball and a bit of composure. Because Rangers will obviously have space to play, and you presume PSV will come on to them more than they did last week. No, you're on mute, Johnny.
This is the problem when I start muting my mic, then I forget to put it back on. It's the old, it's the old brain fog comes in. Stevie, in terms of that team that we've discussed, both myself and Josh are pretty much the same. One change for me. What's your take on how they should line up tonight, and especially that front three?
I wouldn't go a double pivot. I don't think we need Lundstrom and Davis. I don't think that's what I would do. It's a game that we have to win. I'd be more inclined to put Lundstrom next to Lawrence if he's fit, behind Tillman, who would play as close to Cholak as possible. And then Kent picks himself on the left, even though he needs to be better. I thought Ryan Kent was extremely poor on Saturday. Decision making, he needs to be more ruthless. I want him to see him take more shots, especially when he takes the opportunity. Right hand side's up for grabs for me. It could be Matondo, it could be Scott Wright. Scott Wright's not played well in a wee while, but the manager favours him in big games like this. He always seems to go back to him, and he tactically knows where James Tavernier is, the runs that James Tavernier makes, and how he can connect with him. I don't think that Rabbi Matondo's quite there yet, and he might be more beneficial off the bench later to try and hit in the break and things like that. I wouldn't play a defensive midfield. Giovanni van Bronckhorst will, but I wouldn't. I think the Rangers are at their best when they play free-flowing attacking games. Now, I know that we'll have to put in a shift, but Lawrence isn't a lazy player. He can equally play as an 8 next to Lundstrom as a 6, and John Lundstrom's shown that he can command the team by himself also. I know that this is a different prospect in PSV. I know it's a really difficult game, but it's not a game that we need to go and, sit in. We need to offer some sort of offensive strategy as well. So 1 or 2 changes from you guys, but back 5 picks itself. I think, 7, 8, 9 picks itself anyway. It's a couple of changes out with that. Is it Matondo on the right? Is it Lawrence? Is it Davis? Is it Lawrence kind of thing? So we're not a million miles away. But I'd just like to see if Rangers are going to go and have a go tonight, I'd like us to at least go down swinging and have a proper go. The handbrake's been on too much for me recently. So go and make it a game. Go and give it your best, and go and make PSV work for it. Don't give away slack goals like last week. If we're going to go out, then make it on our terms, in terms of make them work for it and make them play. We can go and assert ourselves in this game and make it positive and have good result. Look at what we done in Dortmund. So it is possible. That was only a couple of months ago. And I really hope that we just don't go out with a whimper and try and defend and hit, and let's go and take it to them and see what they're made of and influence the game from our point of view.
Yeah, very positive, Stevie. I like it. Stuart Lang coming in, Joshua. Any word on Kamara yet? You're at the presser, and Gio did give an update, didn't he?
He just said he travelled with the squad, and that was as much as he divulged. So maybe one to keep an eye on over the next couple of press conferences, the next couple of weeks. As I say, I wouldn't be too surprised if Kamara starts tonight. For all, Rangers did well against PSV last week. Van Bronckhorst was speaking in the press conference about seeing areas that he felt Rangers could exploit, but also areas that they had to be really careful about with PSV. As we were saying yesterday, Johnny, Gakpo, I think it's pronounced. I was speaking to some journalists over in the Netherlands last night, and they were saying they expect this to maybe be his last game because he'll go to Man United. As we spoke about Sangare yesterday as well, a top player. So it's difficult for Rangers. I think, in my opinion, this is one of the better teams they've played in the last couple of years. So, yeah, it's a difficult balance to strike between trying to go and implement yourself on a game. I don't think Rangers have been brilliant apart from that Dortmund game, which is a big caveat because they were brilliant on that night. But apart from that Dortmund game under Van Bronckhorst. But if you look at what they did in that game, they played to the opposition's weaknesses, and they did so brilliantly. Dortmund tried to swarm the ball every time Rangers lost it, and Rangers were set up to counter that. And what you have to hope with Van Bronckhorst going into tonight, and I think it's fair to presume that this will happen to a degree. What he's been brilliant at so far in European competition is picking up opposition weaknesses, tailoring his team's game plan to exploit that. And hopefully he can do that tonight against PSV, because as I say, I think it'll be a really difficult game. This team put 5 past Ajax just a few weeks ago, but equally Rangers last week showed that they can go toe to toe with them in possession. And as much as this is one of the better teams Rangers have faced, Rangers have also beaten better teams, I think. So it's that they're both true. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a brilliant game, and you just hope that, as Stevie says, that the players rise to the occasion.
Yeah, a few questions there in the chat about Yilmaz. In terms of, big money signing comes in. We had a number of scouting reports, sounded very, very exciting. Played the one game and kind of was okay, as you might expect. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get used to Rangers and Scottish football. Stevie, were you expecting like Yilmaz to be a slow burn that would take a bit of time, I suppose? And maybe this was erroneous, but I thought he would kind of be a guy that would be for the here and now, a guy that would come in and slot straight in. But it looks like he's going to be more of a guy that is bedded in slowly. Yeah,
possibly. I don't think that's a bad thing for a young boy coming to a new country and a new culture. You also got to remember, I think Borna Barisic, aside of a kind of catastrophe in Belgium, has been excellent. The quality of cross that Borna Barisic put in, and the quality of runs that he was making on Saturday. A lot of time he didn't get the ball off Ryan Kent. If you look at the John Lundstrom situation, Ryan Kent cuts inside instead of slipping him an identical pass to the one that he done for a wonderful cross for Tom Lawrence's goal. So I think Borna has been on it. He had 2 assists, obviously, in the last round that were key to us going through. And I think that there's a are not an urgent need as such. Now, if Ben Davies was available, for example, I think Ben Davies would have been straight in. Yeah. So I think there's more of a need for centre back than there is to swap it at left back. Quite comfortable with Borna Barisic. I think Borna Barisic is capable of being an excellent player for Rangers. He obviously has issues where if he has a bad game, he kind of falls away, and it's a confidence thing for him. But as he's flying at the moment, I don't think we need to worry about putting Yilmaz in. The issue is in terms of that question is when are you going to actually slot him in, because we have such a difficult run of away games coming up. You might get game time, Ross County, maybe half an hour. You'll probably start in the cup game next week against Queen of the South, which is fine. But long term or short to medium term at the moment, I think it's Borna Barisic start, unless he falls away. But at the moment, he's doing really well. He's producing assists. He's producing good moments. So I'm quite happy with Borna Barisic there. I don't think there's a rush, Johnny.
Okay. The other thing that people are asking about is the announcement yesterday that EA Sports, just about the biggest name in sports games, are now Rangers' official video game partner, which is, that's big news. And Ibrox will be in the next FIFA game, FIFA 23. A lot of people saying they're very, very excited about this. Listen, I'm going to just out myself here as a massive FIFA Ultimate Team geek who plays it for a couple of hours most nights. Josh, is this a game that you're involved with, if you're interested in? I mean, a man of your age probably should be, but knowing you're probably too busy thumbing through your manuals detailing the stats of Division 3 in Bulgaria. What's the
I wondered where you're going with that. No, I don't mind the game of FIFA. I need to play it at some point, Johnny. That'd make some good YouTube
I'll
content.
thrash it. Don't worry about that.
Okay, we'll see. Someone clip that up. It'll be, but I've played it enough to know it'll be good to have Ibrox on there. Because is it East Point Arena that's normally the one? And I hate that stadium. It ruins it when you can't play the actual stadium. So no, good fun. I will maybe make a purchase as a result.
Right. Okay. And Stevie, are you a FIFA man?
No, we know what Stevie is.
Football manager.
Used to be a FIFA man. I'm very much a football manager man these days. I used to play FIFA. I used to play it on the top level a long time ago, but I was never how I get these wee guys like CJ Novo and all that play it and do all these skill moves and all that and twisting players around and all that. I can't do that. I'm very much old school. I'm like Neil Warnock, like 4-4-2, big guy up front, get it to the wide man and cross it in. That's my FIFA strategy. So I would say that I am willing to purchase this one. I think it looks good with the Rangers added side of it with the stadium and all that. I thought it was Ivy Lane that I used to play in. The kind of more pedestrian one that I used to kind of play in that was kind of no stands in it. I like that one, so that was my kind of favourite. But I think it's been a long time since I properly played it. As I said, I'm more entrenched in Football Manager, where I'm on 2059. So things are going well in that. So yeah,
how's it
for me?
That's how are things looking in 2059? Is the world still spinning?
Rangers Trophy Hall is significantly better than it is at this point. And I don't suffer fools lightly either as a manager. So very strict disciplinarian. So yeah, it's good fun, and that's how I'll spend the rest of my day because the kids are at school and the wife's at work.
You're playing Football Manager too long when the regens start becoming pundits and criticising you, despite the fact you've given them a 15-year career at the top, winning 8 Champions Leagues. That's when it's time to call it a day, Stevie, I think.
Never. Don't turn my back on this. Got to see it through. I think I'm 83 in it or something. So
wow. Retire, mate. Relax. You aren't there.
The thing is, I always used to play it for like 25 years and then decide, you know what? No, I'm going to go to like Liverpool or Man United or something like that. Just try it. Try something a wee bit different. And then the minute you went, you would pine for being back at Rangers. And you built Rangers up to being the best team in Europe by a mile, so you couldn't actually sign any of the players because none of them want to leave. So then you end up trying to get the job back and, sacking the manager and then reapplying, that's what I used to do anyway. But Anyway, enough of that nonsense. Anyone wants to play me at FIFA on Xbox, DM me on Twitter. Happy to play. I've got Vlahovic, 96 rated up top on the left as a target man with Pablo Dybala alongside him. Sort of doing a sort of hybrid false nine with an instruction to go beyond the line and run into space. Listen, guys, I'm good. So
I think I'd beat you, Johnny. I'll back myself. I think I'd beat you. We'll organise this. What
we'll do is, guys, we'll organise this between me and Josh, all right, and we'll stream it live on the YouTube. So when he gets spanked 9-0 or 9-2 or whatever it is, you can see it all happening live.
I'm Team Joshua here.
Thanks, Stevie. I appreciate it, mate. I'll just keep the ball.
Someone there saying sign Taribo West on a free. That's been a few years since that championship. That was before Josh was born.
Don't know him. No idea.
We were signing Cherno Samba and Michael Duff before you were born on that game, Josh. So that tells you
Mark
Kerr was something else, wasn't he? Sign him from Falkirk for 100 grand, and before you know it, he's the best midfielder in Europe. Right, guys, we've been on way longer than we normally would. I realised that I sort of took this off piece when I asked a complicated question about refereeing that had us sort of talking about refereeing for 10 minutes. So you kept us going. But thanks to everyone for tuning in. I think we've got 600-700 on live at the moment, which is terrific. If you want to support us, and we'd really appreciate if you did, we're obviously available for free on YouTube. But if you hit the subscribe button, that's a big help to us, and it's absolutely free. We've also got a free newsletter, which is available at www.rangersreview.com/email bulletins. You sign up for that, you get a free opinion piece every single weekday straight to your inbox while you're at work, which is a handy distraction, I'm quite sure. On top of that, we've obviously got the website. It's $2.99 a month, but at the moment, you're getting 2 months for £2 if you sign up. And again, that funds everything we do. That funds us being available to come to you live every day at 9:30. So please, if you can, and I know times are tight, but if you can, come on there and do that. Until next time, guys, thank you very, very much for watching. Let's hope that when we come to you tomorrow morning, we are celebrating a very, very fine victory, and we're looking forward to hearing that Champions League music once again.